Hello and welcome to a Smurd P video, and today we are looking at X-Men issue 1 by Gerry Duggan, and this is the trading card variant with Moira X, and on the back there's a little bit about Moira X as well. If you want to read that, you can. Pause. There we go. You can pause that if you like. Hopefully that was long enough. I think I did that a bit quick, but anyhow, let's get into the issue. So Scott Summers at an early meeting with the War Council gave a statement to saying that the Brood deserve no quarter and their threat is real to everyone. We also get we've got this sort of side story where Monette and Forge have put together whatever they put together in science terms to get nowhere, which is in nowhere, back home into its home dimension. So that begins the story. So meanwhile, Jean Grey is fighting Nightmare. And I've got to say, I really did enjoy this sort of little nemesis. I thought it was quite interesting in terms of how sort of petty it ended up being. He didn't like being touched by Jean Grey, etc., and so forth and so forth. So during this fight, Jean Grey manages to send in some of the lost souls that have been killed by the Brood to punish Nightmare. We also learned that even though the Nightmare released the Brood from Brood's control, he has no actual real control of them. They just reverted back to what they do. So Brood's leash is the only thing that's tethered them, and Nightmare took advantage of releasing them. Meanwhile, Jean gives this statement that if you do, she says she never tries to kill because it's so easy for her to kill. But if you ever come back, well, I'm gonna make sure every atom in your body is torn apart. Do the X-Men still not kill, or are they beyond that now? An interesting thought if they consider killing a little bit more easier, etc. And he makes a point saying that there's the fall of your kind to witness. Now we know that there's some fall coming in X related stories very soon. I can't remember where it says Fall of X, but we're currently at the point of before the Fall of X. It's apparently meant to kick off in Hellfire Gala. I'm not sure whether it's a specific event or whether it's just in multiple issues, etc. This downfall and how it happens will be very, very interesting. So Magic Brew and Jean Grey are gonna go get back. So Brew is scared for his kin. He wants to save them. And that's what Jean Grey intends to do. She doesn't intend for them just to perish, etc. And we got What is the Price of Mercy? We got this sort of bio. We got everybody in this issue. Then we've got who is everybody that's created this issue. And this is Lord of the Brood Part 3. And it feels like it's been going on for ages, but maybe that's because I've been reading the Captain Marvel Brood storyline, Revenge of the Brood, sort of alongside this, and that's probably had twice as many issues, whereas this has been actually quite short and sweet, really. So this is written by Gerry Duggan. Stefano Caselli is on the art. Federico Blee is on the colors. VC's Clayton Cowles is on the letters. Tom Muller and Jay Bowen is on design. So Cyclops and his crew are heading back in a cruiser with all the refugees he's picked up, and they're discussing where they can go, Shi'ar Space or Arico, and Arico is deemed not safe for them because of the way that Arico people live, etc. They will take advantage, and these people won't survive there. So Cyclops makes this point to mention that he wishes he had pushed for the Atlantic, I'm not even going to try and say that word, around safe haven for refugees. And then he goes, another beep, decision by the Quiet Council, meaning the Quiet Council sometimes make decisions that Cyclops doesn't agree with. And you got to remember, at one point, Cyclops was the leader of all mutant kind, keeping them from the brink of extinction, making these hard decisions by himself. Sometimes he does not agree with the council's things because all he wants is to save people or to save mutants, etc. Now, things take a turn for the worse. The trap is finally sprung. The refugees start turning into the Brood. And it all hell breaks loose. It was a trap, as we thought it was 2 issues ago. And the X-Men are trying to do this. Now, at great cost to sync, he then has to sync with somebody who isn't close by who he synced with before. So he almost feels and how Polaris felt. That's what he sort of did to achieve these powers. He sort of goes back into this, it feels like sort of like a meditation mode of feeling what Polaris does, how Polaris is, what she does, etc., and how he becomes it. But the cost is great to him as well. And before I get into that, I just wanted to point out he takes no pleasure in what he does in throwing them out, because he feels like he's had to kill these people, and you can see him, he's crying there. This is painful for him, doing these sort of things. And even when he was in the vault and they were running for their lives or struggling for their lives, he never had to do anything along these lines. And it takes the toll on him. And if I remember rightly, he gets older, or it takes a toll on him and this body. And you gotta remember, this body is 100 years old. You know, I don't think he's been resurrected since he's been back. He's been around for, sorry, not 100 years, thousands of years, if I remember correctly. It takes a toll on his thing. There's also this piece with Cyclops and the War Council around the Brood, where they're discussing how they would handle them, and there is even suggestions of no more Brood. And this is about creating an emergency plan if Brood can't control them. So, Forge and Monette are back with nowhere. Magic and that just magically appear there. It's not like they knew that it was there. It's quite weird. And then they sort of say, "What are you doing here? We never expected you to be here." And it's like, well, Forge is your teammate. How do you sort of not know where you are? Meanwhile, we get this message from Kwan, which is Captain Marvel and the rest of them are finding the Brood here. We need assistance, etc. So Cyclops says, etc., and he says we're gonna take them out, much to Brood's dislike. And then Cyclops says, "I'm not gonna let you tell me what to do." It's quite weird, actually. Cyclops almost behaves perhaps a little bit emotionally rather than with a strategy, saying, "This is why we have to do it," because that's what I would expect from Cyclops. That's what I've always expected from Cyclops. We do this because this is the right thing. You can't control them. You know, the logic part of Cyclops is gone here. And maybe that's part because he refers to his father that's in the sick bed. So maybe it's a part of that emotion that is giving him the fact that hundreds of people they've just shoved out the airlock, maybe, you know. And Jean says, yes, he lost control, but there are still some can be saved. And Cyclops quite right. He says, saved for what? What is the value? What is the mercy of the Brood? They didn't give any mercy to anybody else. And, you know, what do they serve? Of then you just containing them on the lease. And he's right. This is what happens when things go wrong. The Brood get out and they kill hundreds of people, maybe even thousands. We're not sure of the death toll here. So Jean says, so it's genocide then. Now we know Cyclops in the past, before this new era, would have done anything to save mutant kind, and he's almost off the. It's almost like that Cyclops is here right now saying, we need to do this because they are threats to mutant kind, sort of thing. So he's referring back to this sort of person, etc. And this isn't just about mutants. He also says to all of life. And he says, what if Brew loses his pets again? And she says, we'll step in. And then he says quite clearly, how many more will be dead then? Refresh my memory of how you dealt with the fungal parasite, Cordyceps Jones. And I can't remember actually. This is Games World, etc. It's been a while since I've read that. Feels like a lifetime ago. Actually, it was probably about 2 years ago since we had that run, etc. And then, so is it all right for Jean to make these decisions, but Cyclops not? So she starts questioning him. So she holds his power back. She takes these things on, and then she wants to hear him say it face to face. And then he says quite clearly, yeah, I think wiping out the brood is a good idea. And she says, how very human of you. So very judgmental from Jean. Wouldn't expect anything less, to be honest with you. And Cyclops is just trying to protect the universe. Now, the next bit I thought was, sorry, not the next bit, in a minute. So he puts it on and says, look, we're going to go there. Those that aren't part of your mind thing, we're still going to kill them. I'm not going to stop. We have to do that, etc. And then take us to the rest of the fight. So I'm not sure if you see any more in Captain Marvel. I've not got that issue. I'm hoping to get that issue in the next couple of days, and I can have a look at that as well. So we may see the X-Men over in that. And then this is the bit I like. Brew says, Cyclops, right? And she says, not always and not today. And then Bruce says, I fear he might be. And I think he might be as well. But sometimes the question is, exterminate a race before they've done anything isn't always the right thing to do, because you're judging on what they've done. But the Brood have a history of doing what they do. And hopefully Brew can control them. Now, then Bruce talks about redemption, etc. So we've got Brood being killed, Brood being saved. And then the end of the story begins with them being on, once again, Jean being a little bit, it feels a little bit harsh when I read this. Maybe I've read it wrong. But the Brood are on nowhere now, so they now got a magic comb, which Krakoa wanted Forge to bring in. And she says, you'll be safe on nowhere. And then Bruce says, how can I repay you? And she says, pay kindness forward, which Brew has always been a gentle soul. And all right, maybe we haven't seen him very much for a very long time in comics. You know, he's not always an active part of the X-Men, etc. But he's always been a gentle soul throughout the years, etc. And Jean doesn't know him very well, but Wolverine or somebody else around that certainly would have known him very well. And she says, you talk about redemption, and I hope you will find a way to earn it. This is Brew. Brew's he's gonna be repenting for what happened. He's probably absolutely devastated that this has happened. So that's why I felt that was a little bit harsh. But she also says that I have come to peace with what the Phoenix did. So there's hope for you. Slight difference. Brew has control of. He's Brood. He has that direct control. The Phoenix, when the Phoenix took shape as Jean and used those memories, etc., to do what she did, I know that Jean absorbed that afterwards, later on, many years later. It still felt like it wasn't Jean that did all that devastation. She's just got all those memories and etc. and the emotions that were felt then. She's just established that, but it was never her. So I can never understand when people say Jean did that, because she didn't do that. That was the Dark Phoenix. However, Jean has absorbed those memories, etc. So I felt like it was a bit harsh to compare, because Brood isn't a different entity or anything. He is Brew, and he will have this on his conscious. Oh, and she says, get some sleep. And that's the end. So it's a very, very interesting issue in my mind. There were lots of great moments, some great individual sort of differences over how the Brood should be dealt with. You got Cyclops wanting to take them out because they are a threat. You got Brood trying to save them. and sort of not being listening. Gene acting as an advocate, saying, well, do you know what? It was Nightmare that did all this. And come on, if Brewkip wasn't taken out, etc. But you could also see Cyclops' view. If it goes wrong again, how many people are going to die in this point? So all valid points. A great issue. Really did enjoy it from Gerry. And I think we're back to Orchis causing trouble next issue. So I'm looking forward to that. So make sure you subscribe to my channel if you're not. Thank you to everybody that is subscribed to my channel. We appreciate you folks. Make sure you look after yourself. Very important these days. And as always, embrace the geekiness. Take care. Goodbye.